It's Friday. Welcome. Career Happy Hour, 3 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time. 3 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time every Friday. As long as I'm alive and available, we will be having Career Happy Hour. It's an opportunity for us to get together, talk through some concepts, current events, what's going on in the market, and to answer your questions about anything related to career. That could be whether you're working or not. If you are working, it's an opportunity to look at new opportunities. Having your eyes and ears open to what's available, I think makes logical sense. If you're in a place and you feel complacent, often that comfort level is something that can catch you off guard or perhaps make you vulnerable in certain circumstances. So I'm always an advocate of keep your eyes and ears open, consider options, alternatives. And the challenge might be that you end up with too many options, too much to think about, and it becomes overwhelm. Have you ever been there? If you don't know me, I'm Andrew Beach. I'm an executive coach. I'm a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you communicate value to find great opportunities faster, whether you're working or not. That's through a pragmatic process of branding, professional branding, planning, and effective networking. Now, today we're really focused on the second of those three components, and that is planning. Part of what we do as coaches is help build a career map or a plan or some sort of objective for you to take advantage of. And it's not uncommon that you'll run into situations where you need to think on paper. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But if you have any questions, by all means, put those questions in the comments section or the chat, whatever platform you're on. We're currently on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and of course, Instagram on my mobile device. So if you have questions, go ahead and drop those. Anything related to career, whether that's interviewing or professional networking, personal branding, that sort of thing, anything related to career or job search in general, I'm happy to answer. So if you have any questions at all, please put them in the comments. I am more than happy to answer. Now, we did have a hiccup today, so I apologize for that. The live stream went active for whatever reason on its own, and it was a half hour early. So we ended up having to end that stream and start a new one. So hopefully you have made it to this particular stream and aren't having any issues that way. If you need to get me, best place to get me typically is on LinkedIn. It's the platform where I'm active most often and where you can find me. And if you want to, please go ahead and put your LinkedIn profile in the comments section. It's an indicator when you do that you're open to people connecting with you and having conversation. So if you feel so inclined, go ahead and do that. Also, depending on the platform you're on, if you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, you do have the capacity through the description to click a link and actually come on live and get hands-on coaching by me right now. So if that's you and you feel like you could use a boost or some extra help or support, and you think people on the stream might benefit from that conversation, then great. By all means, click that link and come on live. Or if you have a question and you don't want it public, go ahead and click that link, come into the back end of Restream here, and you'll have an opportunity to leave a question that's anonymous. Of course, if you're on Instagram, I think there's a way to comment or come on live. I think it's called Duo or something like that. Anyway, you can invite yourself into the stream, and I'll do my best to get that to go to the other platforms. But I haven't quite figured out how to live stream to Instagram yet, other than through the mobile device. Good. So again, if you have any questions, please put those in the chat. Our topic today is this concept of overcoming overwhelm, these option overwhelm. If you look at LinkedIn or Indeed or any of these sites, and you type in just to see how many job postings are accessible there, I did it just this morning, and LinkedIn itself has somewhere around 7.1 million job postings on their platform. 7 million options for you to consider. Now, there may be some duplicates in there. Don't get me wrong. I understand that that platform is leveraged in many different ways, but that's still a lot of options. And so I look at that, and then, I look at people's profiles and how many capabilities they have. So not only do we have a lot of options in terms of opportunity in the marketplace, jobs to be available, but we also look at ourselves and we say, I have all these capabilities. I have all of these strengths, these skills, these experiences, the education that I have. These are all things that give us capability. And part of the challenge is discerning how our capability might actually match up with what's available in the open marketplace. And, in lieu of having some kind of a direct response to what we're putting out there, we have to kind of guess. We have to guess what people are interested in. And sometimes we think they're interested in what they put out there, but truthfully, they're not. They end up going some different direction with somebody else. And it's rather concerning that the hiring community may or may not be as transparent as they could be, nor are we as job seeking professionals or people looking to improve our standing, nor are we maybe communicating the right things to attract those people. So there's definitely some dissonance in that process. Now, there's two things to consider. First is, I don't control what the hiring teams think of me or what they need or their whole process. I don't control any of that process. If there's one thing I control, it's my own thoughts and activities. And that's what we're talking about today, is what are the thoughts or activities or the things that I can do to manage, mitigate, process, in some way, overcome this feeling of option overwhelm. I think more importantly, it's probably a good idea to define what those things are. Sometimes we feel overwhelmed and we don't know what that word really means. We just feel anxiety. And overwhelm, really, by definition, is to cover up completely or to submerge. It's a verb. And so, in order for that to happen, there needs to be an object, and that is your feelings or your mind or your consciousness. And so, overwhelm only comes because it's allowed to come. So let's keep that in mind. It's to cover up or completely to submerge. And that's something we control, is that it can only happen if we allow. The other word is options. So some of us think of options as things. And truthfully, that's also a verb. Options is the act of choosing. The act of choosing. It's also a verb. So if we're thinking about it from this perspective, what we're really saying is that we have control not only of what overwhelms us, but also how we're overwhelmed. And so the act of choosing is kind of what we're going to really focus on today. And how can we do that? How can we look at all of our capabilities and all the options in the market and make a choice about some of those options? And so I have some advocacy in that capacity. And truthfully, the first thing to consider is, how are you processing? How are you processing? Are you just processing these overwhelmed feelings, this anxiety on accident? Or do you do it deliberately on purpose in some capacity? And certainly the latter is what I would advocate, is thinking out loud. Thinking out loud means capturing everything. Now, you can do that on paper. You can do that in some electronic device. You can do it just talking to yourself. Some of the best conversations you'll have are you talking to you about some of the things that are going on, and what is it that you're feeling and how are you feeling it. And some people like to journal, other people do not. But the idea here is, when we look at our capabilities and the marketplace and what is available, we need to think about what is it that we want. And we'll talk through some of these components. But generally speaking, what you want to do is think out loud or on paper or in some way capture all of the things that you're thinking about, all of these different options that are accessible to you. One of the things I shared this week, one of the posts on LinkedIn, was actually using the metaphor, I guess, or the analogy of the Cheesecake Factory menu. Now, I had to do a little research on this, but the Cheesecake Factory menu has somewhere around 20 plus pages 250 items. There is no way that I could sit down in less than 20 minutes, decide what I want to eat at Cheesecake Factory. It just doesn't happen. The fact that they documented all of those things is great, and we can do the same. Now, the idea would be is although we captured all these in something like the Cheesecake Factory menu, is that we would then take that information and in some way distill it into what I would refer to as the happy hour menu, right? So if there was Andrew's happy hour menu at Cheesecake Factory, all that would be contained on that document is all the things I like to eat, drink, have for dessert, entrees. It would just be all my favorites. It'd be like a highlight reel. It'd be like the Sports Center, right? All the highlights. Anyway, so part of this is capturing first, and then we can process and evaluate. Process and evaluate means, hey, let's be clear. There's a lot of capabilities we all have, and evaluating our capabilities means, hey, what do I prefer to do? There's a lot of things I'm capable of doing. Not all of them would I prefer to do. What is that for you? What is it that you would prefer to do? How would you prioritize or in some way evaluate all of your capabilities? Just talking to a coaching client today, and he's done a number of different things, but his future was painting a different picture for him. He had a totally different vision of what he wanted to do in the future, that when you looked at his credentials, his resume, his LinkedIn profile, whatever it is, it told a totally different story. And that means retooling everything based on what you've captured, your desires and all those things, and making sure that what you put out there is consistent with what it is you want people to know about you. And that, thinking out loud and evaluating is certainly part of that process. So let's think for a second, and I'll walk through 4 components here, 4 things that I think you should consider capturing in this kind of context. Now, how you capture it certainly is up to you. Some people do this verbally. Some people do it in writing. Some people scratch it on a napkin, a 3x5 card. It doesn't really matter. But there's really 4 things that are going to help you in a number of different ways. And the reason I came down to these 4 things is I wanted to make it as simple as possible, not just for you, but also for you to communicate to other people what it is that you want. And this is, I do a little podcast, and I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Job Seekers Radio. But Job Seekers Radio, Scott Picard Jones and I talk a lot about what is it that you want? A lot of times we would come across job seeking professionals or people trying to improve their standing or what have you. And we ask them what they really want. And the best many of people can come up with, I just want a good job. I just want a good job. And that doesn't help me. With 7.1 million open opportunities, that doesn't help me connect you with those opportunities. It also doesn't help me connect you to the right people that might have an opportunity that matches what you're looking for. So keep that in mind. So the first part of this and the whole context of all 4 of these items is, what do you really want? What do you really want from your future, from the professional plan or map that you have put together for yourself? What do you want from that? And so call this document or this content whatever you want. Some people call it a dream job description. Some call it utopia. Some call it future me. Whatever you call it, it doesn't really matter as long as you capture these 4 components. And the first one is, who am I? Who am I? Now, I say that in that way because it's really you deciding what your personal brand ought to be. And some of us might use our title. We might use a title at company. We might use something that's easy. And this is actually probably the hardest part of the component, because you look at the rest of the items here, the other 3 are very clear and easy to identify for the most part. Once you find out who you are through a personal branding process, which certainly I could, if you need support in that capacity, a lot of people don't know what that is. And so I have 2 things that help with that. The first is self-awareness. It's called the Self-Awareness Accelerator. And the second thing is branding statements made easy. So if that's something you're interested in, I do have those 2 offerings to help you through that process, as well as access to someone like me to help you find that. If you don't know who you are, then certainly sometimes we allow our brand to be defined for us by the companies that we've worked for or the work that we've done. And we need to be a little more conscious about how we're approaching that. So, first of all, determine who you are. Now, I could very easily say I'm an executive coach. I help people do X, Y, and Z. Well, I often introduce myself to people as a teacher of self education. And that's a little bit different. I like to help people find themselves so that they can communicate that to somebody else with more clarity and intention and purpose and feel good about saying it. And this is something I stumbled upon primarily because I was in a situation where I didn't have a title at company anymore. The title and company was gone. I couldn't use that statement anymore to describe who I was. And I had a minor, I would say, identity crisis. And so if you've ever been there and maybe been laid off or separated from an employer or in some way out looking for work and didn't have a job, it's not an uncommon feeling. And so the good news is people will accept you at how you present yourself. And so who I am or who am I is a question I would answer first because it's going to influence everything else we're talking about here today, as well as any things that you do to put your brand out into the marketplace. So who am I? That's the first thing. Second thing is, what's next for you? What's next? Some might call that a professional objective. And all that is articulating what it is you want to do, where, what kind of work do you want to do? Where do you want to do it? How do you want to do it? Just being very clear about what's next. So I've always talked, at least on some of these sessions, about my interest in certain degrees in experience management. And what that is any kind of experience with an organization is something that ought to be managed, whether that's employee experience or candidate experience or customer experience. These are all people-based experiences with your organization, and they ought to be managed holistically because there's people involved, and each one of them have an influence on your brand, whatever that brand might be, your talent brand, your company brand, your product brand, your service brand, whatever brand you're trying to establish is influenced by the people you're interacting with and the way they're treated. And that's why I talk a lot about talent teams, and I talk about talent acquisition and what does that mean, and what, how are people treated, and why do I apply for a job and not hear anything, and what is up with all the ghosting that goes on. This is stuff that happens. And so that's an interest that I have. So as a professional objective, if I was to go through and do this exercise, that's what I'd put on there. I'd like to be in a position to help influence in some capacity the way companies treat the individuals, either inside or outside their organization, and the experiences that they have, whether that's onboarding or talent branding or customer experience, customer service, whatever that looks like, Good. So that's the second component. Come up with a target. Really, this is just saying, hey, this is the kind of work I'd like to do next. And for me, that would be something in the lines of experience management. For you, it might be something different. Maybe you just want, a remote work opportunity in order to work in Italy so that you can be there for the grape harvest in the fall. I don't know. So some of that is going to be dependent on your desires, of course. And sometimes this document is just for your own purposes, just to dream a little bit. And that brings up the third component, which is where. So some of us are really excited about this concept of work from anywhere or work from home or what have you. And certainly those are things to consider. But defining where you would like to do your work, I think is critically important, because many of us overlook the value of knowing the company, the industry, the geography, the compensation, the types of titles you might be interested in. These sort of tangible things is what I would call the where. We'll go into the intangibles in just a moment. But these tangible things should be very clearly articulated. And there might be, 8 or 10 job titles that you'd be interested in. There might be 4 or 5, 6 geographies, including remote work in some capacity. There might be 2 or 3 industries you have a lot of desire to be a part of. And so there's things to think about there. And so whether that's, something related to perhaps your values, we'll get to the intangibles here in just a second, that's going to then lead to certain industries. So articulating what those are, and you don't have to presume that any one of these organizations is the right one for you. You just need to prioritize what you see here. That's the evaluate piece, right? We put all this down on paper, we write it down somewhere, and now we can start looking at, okay, which one comes first, the chicken or the egg? And I'm just using that as a way to tongue in cheek say, hey, if I could work at this company or that company, which one would I choose? If I could work in this industry or that industry, which one would I choose? And now I have an opportunity to actually make a decision to prioritize. Now, that doesn't say that one is better than another. It just means that one is going to be investigated first by you to eliminate the overwhelm, the option overwhelm. That so many options. I don't know what to do, or I don't know where to start. Well, that's where you start. You start with one company and one person and having a conversation. It's not it's simple, but it's not easy. Simple but not easy. And that's the way most things are in life, I believe, is that many of them are very simple, but they're not easy. And many people would not be interested in doing the activity because it's hard. It's hard to meet people. Let's be clear. It's hard to build relationships. It's messy. A lot of people are going to say no. You may face a lot of rejection. And so you notice in there, I also put in compensation. Some of us have this desire to maybe do active retirement, and compensation isn't important. Good on you. I'm an advocate for looking for market compensation wherever you can find it, and not giving up anything to diminish our feelings about that work. And knowing the market compensation and doing the research and finding out for yourself what the market will bear is part of that process. So that's the third component. Fourth component are the intangibles. Now, I call them intangibles because many people may call these woo things. I mean, it's a job, right? You're not supposed to have the capability to say who you want to work with or what kind of organization you want to be in, but that's all changing. This is actually becoming a pretty big priority for a lot of individuals, and articulating this in some capacity is going to make it very easy for you to know what is a yes and what is a no. And of course, we encourage people to make those decisions after they get an offer, because some of these things may be negotiable. You may be able to say, hey, you know what, this one set of people, I didn't feel good about that. Maybe I could have some additional responsibility, or have as part of the offer process, move into another group after 6 months or something. I don't know. There's a lot of things that you can do or negotiate before you accept an offer, because once you accept an offer, the negotiations are over. So think about some of these intangibles, like the culture. What kind of culture do you want to be in? Are you the type of person that appreciates a competitive atmosphere where everybody's competing against each other? You just like that? You feel fulfilled in experiencing some kind of competition? Or are you more the type of person that you'd like to see a collaborative, egalitarian culture where everybody is equally valued and everybody makes a contribution, and no one person is better than another, and the leadership teams are very accessible? I mean, you can start describing in detail all the things you would expect in the ideal world. Not that you're going to get all of them, mind you, but you're at least processing this on paper. So whether it's culture or values, somebody that's impacting the environment or climate change or diversity and inclusion, whatever you want as your values, there's ways to ask questions. So the nice thing about having this kind of thing is you can do the Jeopardy technique and start asking questions about some of these items. Where do you guys operate? And, how do you feel, how is your company pursuing this concept of diversity and inclusion? So you can start asking a question about that. Now, everybody's got expectations. What expectations do you have of yourself and the people you'd like to work with? What expectations do you have of yourself and the people you'd like to work with? What I found is that people diminish what they currently have and wish they had what they had before. And so or something that they want that they aren't getting, right? The grass is greener concept. But the idea is you haven't looked at what you have that's good right now and capture that. What do you have that's good right now in the organizations you work for? In fact, go right back through all of the items on your resume and say to yourself, what did I like about that? What did I like about working at XYZ company or with these people or this person? And I think what you'll find is that very quickly you will come up with a set of values and cultural norms that you would prefer to have or be in to make you successful, happy, a little more full of joy, I suppose, in actually going to work. Now, again, all of these things are things you control. You control the definition of what you think this thing is. What is the ideal for you? And that's what this is all about, is identifying what is true for you. What is the now it's your truth, but that doesn't mean it's the only truth. I guess truth is just truth. Maybe that's a bad analogy. Anyway, but the idea here is you're identifying a target. Maybe that's it. You're identifying a target that you're attempting to approach, recognizing that the idea here is to optimize this framework and say to yourself, okay, how close can I get to 100%? Knowing that I may never get 100%. I might only get 85. Well, what if you rated how you are against these ideals now? Maybe you're a 95 now. Great. What can make it 100? And what can make it worse, right? That's the other side of it. Many people don't see the negative side. What can make it worse? I mean, I've been in lots of organizations and I've coached lots of people. And the one thing that I think a lot of people aren't expecting is when they have a reorg and new leadership comes in, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think it's going to stay the same way? It can't possibly. You have new people. You have a new leader that's leading your team. How do you process that? How do you start building new relationships from scratch? If you don't have something like this, you won't have a way to communicate. You'll expect that person will know everything that you've ever done and what you're good at from day one. And it just doesn't work that way. It takes roughly 50 hours to create a relationship. That's just a casual friend. 50 hours. And we can't expect when a new leader or someone new coming to our organization that we automatically are friends. It just doesn't work that way. It takes an investment of time, energy, effort. And yes, it's hard. And yes, I recognize it could be uncomfortable and a little bit messy, but it's worth it. It's worth it. It's a key skill, being able to build relationships in that capacity, because our contributions always come around. It's kind of like a boomerang. Our relationships, our investment, our contributions is like a boomerang. As soon as you pour into somebody, you initiate and activate the law of reciprocity. So these are just 4 components that you can very quickly put down on a single piece of paper or a napkin or a 3x5 card. It's not very difficult. It may take some investment of time, specifically on the first component, who am I? So if you have any questions about that, I'm certainly happy to answer. Let me see if we got anything here. Looks like somebody was trying to invite a friend. Diane, I hope you were able to get your friend to attend. If you did, that's great. If not, there's always the replay. So please, by all means, if you aren't able to attend, there was an issue with the invite. I set up the event. I had it ready to go. And I came into Restream and I must have hit a button or something happened. And it started the stream 30 minutes early. I ended it hoping that I could start it up again, but it just didn't work. So my apologies for that one. But if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. I'm happy to answer, or you can just hit me up on LinkedIn. Go ahead and, hit my profile on LinkedIn. I'll put that up on the screen. Or you can just click the link wherever you're joining from and message me through that platform, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. I respond to all channels accessible to me. So good. I'm not seeing any questions in here. So I thank you for coming today. That concludes our career happy hour for this week. Join us every Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time. I'll share a little bit of a teaching like this. We'll answer questions that you might have. And if you need additional support, you're more than welcome to fill out the application down below to see if coaching with me is right for you. All right, folks, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Career Happy Hour. Bye now.